Saffie, thank you so much for joining our seminar today ahead of your big race. How are you feeling?
Yeah, good. It's sort of like an everyday occurrence for me.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. We're going to have sort of a chat about your career and life as a jockey kind of generally. And so I'll just get started straight away with, I think the first thing that's kind of interesting about you, which is the move from eventing into racing and sort of how you found that and what the motivation was, and if racing was sort of always the end goal. If you could just talk us through that change.
Yeah, I obviously dad was a jockey, and he's been training racehorses since whenever I was alive, really. And I started riding out at about 12 on the racehorses, but I'd always ridden ponies and stuff all the way through my childhood. And I was very fortunate enough to sort of have a few really good event horses, and it sort of led me down that path for a while. But I think sort of the end goal was always going to be race riding.
Okay, so happy where you ended up. And then in terms of following that move into race riding, could you maybe talk us, I mean, you've had a pretty stellar career so far, and you're only, you've got a long way left. Could you talk us through for you some sort of personal highlights for your racing career?
Yeah, eventing, I was very lucky I went to 3 European championships and won 5 medals over those 3 championships. And from racing, this is my 3rd year, going into my 3rd season now, and I've ridden over 115 winners up until this point, and been lucky enough to ride a few big ones and sort of ride all over the world so far. So I've just come back from Dubai last week, and no, it's going okay.
Oh, amazing. And that's kind of something I thought might be helpful to touch on is that sort of the lifestyle and the job, because as you say, it's par for the course, every day a race, potentially every week a different event, a different location. How is the life? How is the balance, the lifestyle? I'm sure it's very full on, and it's probably, you say it's a job, but I imagine it's also sort of a vocation and a passion. So if you could just talk us through that aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. There's not much. She talked about balance. There's not much balance, really. It's sort of an all or nothing sort of job, really. It's obviously a lot more than a job. I think if it was going to be if you're going to call it a job, then you'd be a bit crazy. There's no 9 to 5 about it, really. As I said, like, you could be different places around the world. On last week, Thursday, I was in Southall, which is sort of towards the northern half of England. I was in Meydan in Dubai on Friday, and then I was back to ride at Lingfield then on Saturday. So it's fairly full on, but again, it's amazing and I absolutely love it.
And do you find, I mean, that in some way, you're self-employed, I think, as the role, and you're going all around the place. Can it be sort of isolating or lonely in any sense then because of that? Or is there quite a robust community around you? You're sort of bumping into the same people and riding against them, I guess, over and over again.
Yeah, it can be you're spending a lot of hours in the car. I think on average during the main season, which is sort of March to November, you're in the car for about 2,000 miles a week.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a lot. And
what a good
yeah. And no, obviously all the jockeys were obviously all competitors sort of every day, but at the same time the majority of us all get on pretty well. And my boyfriend's actually also a jockey, so it's about the only time I see him as well as the races.
Yeah, and I've seen you raced against each other quite a lot as well. How is that? Is that sort of strange, or you just you're so used to it by now?
It's an everyday occurrence, so it's quite funny. But whenever there's sort of a tight finish between the two of us, there's always a bit of banter. But no, we're both always very happy for each other.
That's good. I'm sure it makes for a great headline when you're sparring at the end. That's fab. And I suppose it's nice then to be, he obviously knows the lifestyle, knows the intricacies. It'd be very probably difficult to be with a non-rider in some ways, I'm sure, because it's just full on.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think if I had a so I don't know, a normal boyfriend, let's say, I don't think they'd understand that I can't make any plans till about the day before the day before that. So no, yeah, it works well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds extremely demanding, but it seems like you really just take it in your stride. You don't seem like a complainer at all.
No, definitely not. I think everyone loves it, and everyone's sort of got the same goal that everyone wants to be the best, really. And it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of sort of weird hours, and probably quite the same, similar as being a lawyer. My brother's wife is a lawyer, and we always discuss the weird hours that we seem to be doing. So yeah, lots of hard work.
That's Saffie O'Sullivan in Chambers, is it?
That's actually my cousin.
Ah, okay. Oh, very good. You know a lot of lawyers. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to compare our professions, but I do think yours is kind of fundamentally a lot more impressive. But thank you for that. Good try. I suppose maybe one thing that might be, is there anything sort of about either the lifestyle or the sort of training that you have that would sort of surprise people to know about the profession?
I probably the weight restrictions and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of jockeys. I'm very lucky that I'm naturally very light and I keep on top of it. I'd sort of be in the gym. I'd be racing even this time of the year, but mainly from sort of March, November, I'd be racing 7 days a week, and I'd only really get a day off if I have a ban or something like that. So if I've been badly behaved. But yeah, no, it's sort of a 7-day-a-week job, and on top of that, lots of jockeys are we have to make certain weights each day, and there's a lot of jockeys would be sort of sweating off up to 6-7 pounds every single day. So that's probably something that not many people would know, but I'm very lucky that I'd sort of probably during the season on average have to take off a couple of pounds, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, but nothing. I'm very small, so very lucky.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is interesting. Gosh, that's actually a huge component of getting ready. Which, yeah, I suppose people kind of imagine that you just go into it if you've got a small frame and then that's that done. But yeah, interesting. I wondered as well then if you could, alongside having some really amazing achievements, you've also had some fairly significant falls and significant injuries, and I wondered if you might talk us through, obviously that's something lawyers are very interested in. And maybe if you talk us, if it's okay, if you
of course,
the fall at Windsor. I know that was a pretty spectacular one, although I'm not sure how much you'll remember.
I've been told lots about it. It's that was a typical case of how quickly our game can change. I rode a winner in the race before, and half an hour later I was being taken away in an air ambulance. And that is the amazing thing about our sport, is how, in a good way, how quickly things can change. When you don't think anything's going right, everything changes from race to race, really, every half an hour. But at the same time, it can sort of highlight how badly things can go as well. And I had a fall where we were going into the first bend at Windsor, and the horse in front of me moved off his line and cut me up, as essentially sort of like a car cuts you up on the motorway, and brought me down. I was lucky enough that it's probably a good thing I was knocked out. I punctured both my lungs, broke 13 ribs in total. I then had a Montegra fracture, which is where your 2 bones break in your lower arm, and then they also dislocate from your elbow. I then also dislocated my wrist and broke the 3 bones across my hand as well. So I was fairly battered. I was knocked out for around 6.5 minutes, and then spent 10 days I spent half of that time in a intensive care, and then just in a normal ward, and then and then I was back racing in 5 months, which is the longest I've had off. So I had a bit of a holiday then.
It doesn't sound like a holiday.
Lots of rehab. That's
Yeah. What
we're
was the recovery process sort of like for you? Because again, I mean, self-employed, that's a huge kind of burden to be bearing. How did the profession sort of rally? Were you well supported, and how did the process of rehabbing go? Because 5 months seems pretty impressive actually for that list of injuries.
Yeah, we're very lucky that under the PJA, which is the Professional Jockeys Association, we get a thing called PRIS, which stands for I think it's Professional Riders Insurance Scheme. So if you have a bad fall and you're out for a period of time, they basically they're paying you every week, calculated on the amount of rides that you would have normally had. That's and how they pay you. And
Fair.
yeah, so no, I was very lucky that was the case. And then we're also extremely lucky that we have the Injured Jockeys Fund, which have 3 main centres around the country, one in Oaksey House in Lambourne, one Peter O'Sullivan House in Newmarket, and the other Jack Berry House, which is in Moulton. And I'm very lucky that I live in Lambourne, so it's only 2 minutes away. And I was there 6 days a week from the second day I was out of hospital until the day I was back riding, and doing everything from like just gym stuff to physios to hydrotherapy to absolutely everything really. And we're so unbelievably lucky to have that, because I think even physically as well, but for your mindset as well, it's amazing, because you go from being flat out and busy, literally not having a spare moment to think about what you're going to eat, and then you go from waking up every morning to thinking, what am I going to do with my day? And it really sort of
terrible at not being busy.
No, I honestly, you can ask any of my friends, if I have a day off, I don't know what to do with myself. It's a bit ridiculous, but no, it's sort of
sport.
Yeah, it gave me something to sort of get up for, and it meant that I sat there at the end of the day and I felt that I'd not achieved what I normally achieve, but sort of I'd achieved something. And I'd otherwise I would have just been sort of sat at home twiddling my thumbs, not knowing what to do with myself really.
Yeah, great. Oh, that's amazing support. And I suppose, I mean, you say you don't remember the fall. When it came to getting back on a horse, so to speak, how was that? Was there any sort of mental difficulty, or because you didn't remember things, was it, sort of fine for you?
I found it absolutely fine. I think it's something that when you start as a jockey, you accept that's going to be part of your job. We're very lucky as flat jockeys that you don't have as many falls. Jump jockeys obviously have a lot of falls, but on the flat racing, you're going a lot faster. The ground tends to be a lot quicker, so a lot harder. So when you do fall, it's sort of more catastrophic than it is over fences, because when you're jumping, a lot of the time you get chucked away from the horse if you fall. Whereas on the flat, a lot of the time the horse tends to fall on you, and you're going faster, and the falls we have a lot less falls, but when you do, it tends to hurt a lot more. Okay. But no, I didn't find any troubles. I've had a few other falls since then. Yeah. I've fractured my leg, and lucky enough I was able to ride after that. Once the swelling had gone down, and you learn to cope with pain quite quickly, and I was able to ride after, I think it was 3 weeks after I fractured my tibia, and I rode after 3 weeks then, and then I had a fall this last season gone where I chipped the top of my shoulder, and I luckily managed to ride after 4 days. So
God, you're right.
It was a bit crazy, but no, as long as you can cope with pain, you'll be fine.
That's great. Well, yeah, amazing. Thank you for talking about that. I suppose the next thing that I think might be interesting for people, so obviously I think one thing that's really interesting about the job is that it's one of the sports where men and women are sort of competing alongside each other. And I suppose I just wondered if you talk a bit about being a woman in the profession, and if there's, you might say, if there's no difference, or any challenges that come with that, I suppose.
I'm very lucky starting out now that I think a lot of people have made a lot of steps before me. The likes of sort of Hayley Turner, who was the first woman to win a Group 1, and she's still riding now. But I think I can't speak for her, obviously, in the sense of it probably was a bit harder, because just when you've had it still is a male dominated sport, and I think you just I've never been made to feel as if I had to prove myself any more than a man does, and in a way I kind of like it, because I feel like almost you start out and not the odds are against you, but not that people have
Slightly
less expectation, but you're sort of the underdog, and you get noticed more if you're good, really. And I've been very lucky that I've had a great sort of base of supportive trainers, and they have given me opportunities to prove that there is no difference, really. And I think the way, like Holly Doyle, she was third in the Jockeys Championship this year, and I hope there's a point that in the next few years I can be there. And I think if it's one of those sports, if you're good enough and you sort of land on the right opportunities, then things can happen. And I don't think people really think any different of it now.
That's great. That's really excellent to hear. And I suppose thinking then about the future, you've already kind of had so many great achievements, but what are your goals for the future? How do you sort of think about them? Because on the one hand, you're sort of every day you're racing, and so you could be kind of looking at things on a day-to-day basis, but how do you set goals for the future? Do you do sort of numerical goals? Do you say that race I want to win that? Or how do you look to the future?
I think obviously growing up, you look at all the big races and think, oh, I'd love to win that, and that's always in the back of your mind. And numerically, you do sort of set yourself a few goals, and but at the same time, things can sort of, like, you can have an injury or something, and I try not to think too much about it, because something that's so out of your control that can happen. And I'm one of those people, if I don't achieve something I set out to achieve, it will sort of fry my brain a little bit. Right. So I try to sort of take every day as it comes, and sort of try and think about it that way. But there's always in the back of my mind of where I want to be, and what I want to achieve this year. And obviously I was lucky enough to ride my first group winner last year, and that was a big deal. And there's not every jockey wants to be on good horses in good races, and sort of Royal Ascot is the pinnacle of our sport, and I've grown up going there every year, and I keep finishing second, so to ride a Royal Ascot winner this year would, if the right opportunities arise, would be really cool.
Okay, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for you when Ascot's on. That would be fabulous. And I suppose just then kind of a note to end on. Obviously today Outer Temple has gathered people to talk about the sport, and things where lawyers tend to be concerned about, regulation, accidents, or all these different aspects. But from your perspective as a sportswoman in the middle of it, what do you see for the future of the sport, sort of as it continues? What are some opportunities and maybe some challenges you see coming its way?
I think it's tricky. There's been a lot of sort of bad publicity around at the moment, especially about the use of the whip, and it's been a sort of really tricky debate, and it's been sort of going backwards and forwards between the jockeys and the BHA and everyone. And it's going to be hard with this new disqualification rule coming in. Jockeys have got to realise that I don't think that's going to change. I don't personally know if it's going to change, but if it doesn't, everyone's just got to be extremely careful. I personally don't think enough I remember them when the first whip review came out a few years ago. There was a part of it that said they were going to push sort of publicity and trying to try and educate the public that wouldn't know about it, and show that how it doesn't hurt the horse and things like that. And I don't think enough was made to do with that. And I think it's hard. I think we obviously have also on top of that a lot of issues with prize money, and I also don't know how you go to fixing that. There's obviously some incredible racing jurisdictions around the world. When you look at sort of Australia's model, and obviously Japan's model is completely different to that again, but it would be interesting to see if we could sort of try and implicate some of those things up here. And because realistically we have the best racing in the world, the likes of the Epsom Derby, and they're the most sort of prestigious races in the world, and to think that we don't have the best prize money is ridiculous. We have the best horses, the best breeding, the best races, and to think that we still don't have the best prize money, I think is poor, and it's something hopefully that in the future we can try and change.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you. Those were really interesting answers. Well, amazing. I'm going to let you go. I know you've got a race later on today, which will be starting, I think, just as everyone filters to their drinks after the seminar. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I know you're extremely busy. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope that everyone has enjoyed listening to what you've had to say. So thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. Bye.